Okay, so for this part, what we're going to do is kind of like we were doing yesterday, but here's the difference for what we have for today. All we're going to do today is we're going to write an equation. Oh, sorry, you can't even see that one. We're going to write an equation in vertex, or we said depending on the book and how it's written, they may call it vertex. They may also call it graphing form. Okay, and basically we're going to do like we were doing yesterday. The very first thing you're going to do is you're going to find the vertex. Okay, and when you find the vertex, again, you're going to have to do like we did yesterday. You're going to have to find out what the x value is when you do the negative b over 2a. And then to get the y part of it, you're going to plug in this value here. Okay, so that part's the exact same thing we did yesterday. You're going to find the vertex, find the negative b over 2a, take that number, plug it back into the function to figure out what the y value is going to be, and you've got your vertex for this one. Okay, and then the second thing you're going to do, you're going to plug in. Now, and actually, when you do your vertex on this one, you know, we call it that. This is really technically, this is your h and your k values. Let's do that. Sorry about that. Let's make that h and k there. But now that's going to get confusing here in a second. So even though it's the vertex, you know, when you find your vertex, we always talk about being the h and the k. Sometimes they'll talk about x and y, but in this case, we're going to make sure it's h and k. You're going to plug in the h, k, and a values into that equation. Okay, and that's what we did the first day, which was the vertex form we had. So the only thing we're going to do today is basically do the same thing we did yesterday. We're going to find out what the vertex is. So that's really the only practice we've got for today. We're going to find out what this vertex is, and then we're going to plug those values in. And once we have this, then we're going to have the vertex form. Now, today, we're not going to worry about graphing it. We're not going to worry about finding the axis of symmetry or all the other stuff. All we want to do today is, number one, can you find the vertex? And then number two, once you've got the vertex, let's just plug it into the equation. We're not going to do all the other stuff that's asking us to do. That basically today we're just going to practice on that one. So it's a calculator practice. Can we get the numbers? Can we plug it in the calculator? Can we get the numbers that we need it to be? Okay, and that's it. That's all we're doing. We're not doing axis of symmetry. We're not going to do all those other things. We're just going to find the values, and then once we find out what the vertex is, we're going to plug it in so we've got the equation, and then that's all we're going to do. Okay, so on the back side of that sheet, and again, it's going to ask us to do all this other stuff that's here, but you can just, if you want to scratch that out, you can just scratch that out. I guess I should have done this, so. Alright, so here's our directions. We're going to write it in vertex form. That's it. We're not going to do all this other stuff that's here, so you can scratch all that out. Because that's just, we've done that the last couple of days, so everybody should have a handle on that one. Now we're just going to make sure that you can write this thing in vertex form. Okay, so for number one, all we're going to need is that, again, if we're going to do this, where we're doing the negative b over 2a, we don't even need the c value, so all we need to know in this case is that the a value is -1, the b value is 2. Okay, and again, really the only math we really have to worry about this one we're going to do is do the negative b over 2a. So that's the negative of 2 over 2 times negative 1. Alright, so that's negative 2 over negative 2. And if you divide negative 2 by negative 2, it gives you the h value is 1. Okay, and again, the only thing we're going to do from there is now that we've got this value of 1, we're going to take that 1 and we're going to plug it back into that equation. I'm just going to write it here right beside it. Okay, and again, once we've got this number, just plug it back in. So we're going to plug that in here, and we're going to plug it back in here. All right, and when we do that, that's going to be the negative of 1 squared plus 2 times 1 minus 5. Okay, and again, let the calculator do the work for us here. So we're going to punch it in just like it is. We've got a negative. Oops, we don't hear. We've got the negative. You've got the 1 in the parentheses. We've got to square it. Plus 2 times the 1 minus the 5. Okay, and again, as long as you put that number, whatever this h value is, as long as you put it in parentheses, there's the only way you can miss this problem is if you punch it in wrong. If you punch it in with the parentheses in there, it will give you the correct answer every single time. And that one's negative 4. Okay, and here's the only difference from what we did yesterday. Yesterday, we kind of stopped and we said, okay, well, that's the h and k, so that's our vertex at 1, negative 4, and we were kind of done. The difference is if we're going to write it in vertex form, we've got to plug those values into this thing. So this is our h, this is our k, and some people are like, what's the a value? Well, the a value is this number they gave us back here. So this one, you don't have to look for it because they give you the a value back here. So the a value is negative 1. Okay, so all we have to do then is plug these numbers in, and when you plug it in, you've got to clean it up maybe just a little bit. Sometimes maybe, sometimes not. So, okay, so we got y is equal to negative 1 times x minus h is 1 squared plus negative 4. And then really, here's the only part you can clean up on this one. If you want to leave the negative 1 just like it is, that's fine. If you want to take the negative there and just take the 1 away, that's fine. That negative 1 is kind of optional. But if you got plus negative 4, just make it a minus 4. So if you want to put the 1 here, you can. If you don't put the 1, that's fine too. Okay, and again, that's the only difference for what we're doing today is yesterday, once we got the vertex here, we were pretty much done with anything. The only thing we're going to ask you to do now is if it asks for vertex form, you're going to take the h and the k, your vertex, and the shortcut is too, if y'all remember when we were taking the problems out and kind of doing the opposite, like in the bell ringer, how when we had these two numbers, we knew that this was going to be negative 5, negative 3 for the vertex. You know, we knew this was going to be negative 2, negative 1 here. That basically, once you know these two numbers, you know what number goes on the inside, you know what number goes on the outside. And you're basically going to do that part. So if this was a positive 1, we changed it to a negative 1. The negative 4 stays the same, and then really the only thing you need to do is punch that number in here. So if you want to think about it that way, that's probably an easier way of kind of doing that one. That, you know, instead of kind of working through everything, we could just do something like that. Okay, so let's do this. On the back, tell you what, if you want to, flip back over to the back side real quick, just to make sure everybody's kind of got that one. Because we're going to run out of room on the front side because that one took kind of a long stretch to get there. So let's do, I'm going to take number 2, we're going to put it on the back, so the negative 2x squared minus 8x plus 3. We're going to do that on the back here. So that was, yeah, that's the formula I need right there for vertex form. Negative 2x squared minus 8x plus 3. Okay, and again, the only thing we need really on this one is we need the negative b over 2a so we can get the h value. Alright, so for this one, we've got our a is negative 2. We've got our b is negative 8. And again, if we're just going to write it in vertex form, we don't even need anything else. We just need those two pieces there. Alright, so to get the h value, again, it's the negative of b over 2 times 8. So that's the negative of negative 8 over 2 times negative 2. Okay, and yes, every single time when you do this one, use the parentheses because again, that will make things a lot easier on that one. So if you got a minus negative, that makes that an 8 a positive on the top. On the bottom, if you do 2 times negative 2, that part's negative 4. So when you divide those two things, you get a negative 2. Okay, and then once we got the h value part of it, then all we're going to do is we're going to take that negative 2 and we're going to plug it in for x over here. So I'm just going to rewrite it underneath it here. And some people may ask, do you really have to write it down if you're just going to plug it in the calculator? Not really. That if we know that this negative 2, we're going to plug it back in, you know, maybe it's good for a visual, that sometimes that way you can make sure you don't leave anything out. That way when you plug it in, you can make sure that that part, and when you plug it in, looks exactly the same as there. Alright, so we got negative 2 with parentheses. Negative 2 squared minus 8 times negative 2 plus 3. Okay, so again, negative 2. Negative 2 is in parentheses, we've got it squared, minus 8 times negative 2, and plus 3. And that's 11. Okay, so there's your vertex, negative 2, 11. Okay, and again, we're going to see if we can even make this a little bit shorter if you want to think about it. So, again, if we go back to these two questions we did with our bell ringer earlier, that if you pull the numbers out, you get the vertex. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to plug these two numbers in. First number goes in the parentheses. Second number goes on the outside. And just remember that whenever you take a number in or out of parentheses, you always just change the sign. So vertex form, we're going to do x instead of minus 2. We're going to do plus 2. And that 11 that's positive, we're going to keep it positive there. And we just need to put a squared. Okay. The only other thing we need is, again, we got to plug in the a, h, and the k. So here's the h, here's the k. We got to put this a value that's over here of negative 2 We just got to put it in front, so we'll put a -2 right there. Okay, so again, that's the only three things you have to plug in. You need your A value, plug in your H value, and then your K value. And all you got to remember is that when you do that one, you just change this number. You always change the sign when you take it in or you plug it out. So this one, if it's a -2, when you plug it in, it's a +2. Okay, so here's what I want y'all to do, just to practice for a second. Let's take number let's do number 4. That way there's plenty of room here. Y'all work out number 4. See what you get for this one. Plug it back in. You know, do the -b/2a. Do all that stuff. Just figure out what it is, and then we're going to check and see what you get there. And I'll pause the video while we do that. Okay. So again, the only thing you need for this one is you need your a is -1 and your b is -6. So if we do the -b/2a. We got that. Okay, again, minus negative makes that a 6. 2 divided by -1 is -2. If you check that number, that would be -3. Okay, so then we're going to plug -3 in here. So we'll plug it in there, plug it in there, and then everything else goes on the outside of it. Technically, this would be the f of x, or the y, or the k, whatever you want to call it here. Okay, so we're sticking with the vertex. This is the -b/2a. That's the h part of the vertex. When you plug this thing in, that's the k part of the vertex. And again, we're going to check that with the calculator, see what we get here. We got minus -3 squared. Minus 6 times -3 is minus 11. Alright, everybody get -2? Okay, plug all that in, we get -2, so that's the second part of the vertex. Okay, so there's your vertex at -3, -2. Okay, and I always kind of like, I know you don't have to do this, but I kind of like writing down the vertex. That way when I plug it back in, I'm good to go. So again, the first number goes on the inside, so change that from a minus to a plus. The second number goes on the outside. And then the one thing that's easy to forget is you do need that a value that's in front. So this -1 that was back over here, that does need to go right there. So we've got it there. So I ask you for the equation. A lot of times I'll put y equals or f of x equals. Again, it doesn't really matter. But that's the main part of the equation that you're looking for right there. Okay, and the one part there is kind of optional. If you put the 1, that's great. If you don't put the 1 and you just got negative and then x plus 3 squared minus 2, that's fine. So the 1, you can put it in or leave it out. It doesn't really matter. It's the same either way.